episode of the James Nolan podcast. We got a lot to talk about today. Mets international sign-in prospect. Yankees got an international prospect. Jets are looking for a new head coach. Aaron Glenn, my favorite of the bunch so far. Mike Vrabel, kissing goodbye to the Patriots. And then we got the Giants to talk about a little bit too. Are they going to select Travis Hunter with the number 3 overall pick in the upcoming draft? We're going to talk about potential QB options for them if they do select Travis Hunter. Do they go with a mid-round pick like a Jalen Milroe? There's a lot that the Giants can do. Kirk Cousins will be potentially a free agent. It seems like the Atlanta Falcons will cut him to save $10 million. It just makes sense for the Atlanta Falcons to do so. Then again, they could trade him. So what could a trade look like for him? Justin Fields, Sam Darnold. There's plenty of options. Russell Wilson even. So the Giants still have QB options for 2025, and they do want to win. John Mara said he is sick of losing. Brian Daboll and Joe Shane, well, quite frankly, they need a winning season. So as many Giant fans expect that the Giants should punt away the next season just to get a higher draft pick in next year's draft, Brian Daboll and Joe Shane need the exact opposite if they want to stick around. So the Giants are going to be trying to win, which is why I think they could bring in a veteran quarterback. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. But to start off the show, we're going to talk about Jon Heyman's recent report about Pete Alonso. Pete Alonso and the Mets have been in talks, in a staring contest all offseason long. Pete Alonso sees Brandon Nimmo get paid. He sees Lindor obviously get paid all that money. He sees Sean Manaea get paid. I mean, Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer in and out the door. They got their money, but Pete Alonso still wants his money from Steve Cohen. And quite frankly, it doesn't seem like he's going to get a lot of it. I think it's going to be a 3-year deal. I think he's going to end up on the Mets. I do not think a Vladimir Guerrero Jr. trade is realistic. The Blue Jays are trying to get Vladdy. And as much as I want to say it would be nice to wait for Vladdy, the Mets have a championship window in 2025 with Juan Soto, Francisco Lindor in the prime of his career, because Francisco Lindor is not getting any younger. I do not want to wait for 2026 and 2027 when I'm not saying he's going to start to decline like Pete Alonso did in recent years, but Lindor, he is in the prime years of his career, coming off arguably the best season of his entire career. So we need to maximize the 2025 team as much as we need to maximize years down the road. And that starts with re-signing Pete Alonso. And the Mets have made it clear, according to Jon Heyman, soon. They want him to make a decision very soon. And I've always talked about it on the previous podcast all offseason long. Pete Alonso on the Mets makes too much sense. And here's why. Mark Vientos, as great of a hitter as he is, coming off a great season, a great postseason performance, hit 27 home runs in just 110 regular season games, 4 home runs, over 1,000 OPS, arguably the best postseason performer. You could make an argument for Giancarlo Stanton. One of those two, definitely the best postseason performers in this past MLB playoffs. But we do not want him at first base, because if he's at first base, that means we're rolling the dice with Brett Baty, who's a career .215 hitter and 584 at-bats. We're rolling the dice with Ronnie Mauricio, who's coming off a torn ACL. We're rolling the dice. I love the potential of Luis Angel Acuna, and I talked about it before. I think he could play third base. I think he could play even the outfield. That's how much of an athlete he is. So I don't think he's just a sole second baseman, but I don't want him to be the third baseman. I don't want Ronnie Mauricio to be the third baseman. I don't want Brett Baty to be the third baseman of the New York Mets in 2025. I think it makes all the sense in the world to go for it in 2025. If you have a lineup, Lindor leading off, Soto batting second, Nimmo batting third, Alonso fourth, and Vientos batting fifth, Francisco Alvarez, maybe he lives up to his potential. Who knows at this point? He needs to get going, because I don't think he's going to be in a longer of a leash as many Met fans think next year. And we're going to get into that in a little bit too. But Pete Alonso hidden behind Soto, I have a hard time seeing him not have a bounce back year. This is a guy that in 5 full seasons, now counting 2020, 3 out of 5 of those full seasons, he goes 40-plus homers, 115-plus RBIs. He is one of the best power hitters in baseball. He's one of the best run producers in baseball. Yes, he was not clutch at all in the 2024 regular season, but we talk about it all the time. You get paid in New York. You become a New York legend if you perform in the postseason. Look at Eli Manning. I know it's comparing apples to oranges, but Eli Manning, why is he remembered and beloved so much by Giant fans? Because he is a postseason performer, those 2 Super Bowls over Tom Brady. Not a great regular season quarterback by any stretch, but he won 2 Super Bowls. He was a postseason performer, and that's what Pete Alonso did this past postseason. He saved the Mets' chances. I know Lindor's grand slam against the Philadelphia Phillies was one of the biggest Mets home runs in franchise history, but you can definitely make a case, and I can make that case, that Pete Alonso's home run was bigger And more important, because that Lindor home run doesn't happen unless Alonso saves us against the best closing pitcher, in my opinion, in Devin Williams against Milwaukee Brewers in a do-or-die Game 3 in the wild card round in the ninth inning. So go ahead, too. It was perfect. It was perfect. Perfect moment for Pete Alonso. It's exactly what he needed. And he did perform very well in the postseason. He had 4 home runs, 273 batting average, 999 OPS. I don't think Pete Alonso is declining. I don't think his best years are behind him. And especially if he joins this lineup. Hidden behind Juan Soto. You get, or even, not even Juan Soto, you have him hit behind Mark Vientos or Brandon Nimmo, who gets on base a ton. He's going to have a much better year in this lineup than in years past, because we've always talked about it for his entire 6-year career with the New York Mets. If Pete Alonso had someone to protect him, Lindor, yes, he's a great hitter, all-world shortstop. But at the same time, Lindor is not his protection. Lindor's always hit in front of him. If you have a guy like Mark Vientos or Brandon Nimmo protecting him, hitting behind him, and then you got Juan Soto hitting in front of him, oh, man. I mean, we know what Lindor can do out of the leadoff spot. We know the on-base percentage of Juan Soto, career .421. Brandon Nimmo, on-base machine. Mark Vientos, I mean, if he comes up with runners on, he's going to drive them in. I have a good feeling about that. So, Pete Alonso, I think it's a must re-sign. I think it's going to happen. And you know what? A lot of Mets fans are also kind of upset with the way the Mets are treating Pete Alonso. But at the same time, business is business, man. Business is business. He had the worst year of his career at the worst time. It's just a fact. 34 home runs, career low. Career low in RBIs, only 89. I mean, he picked a bad year to have a down year, for sure. For sure. That 7-year deal that he had on the table that he declined, he looks like a complete idiot for turning it down. But he's not getting a multi-year contract, I think, for the rest of his career. And that's even if he has an opt-out after 1 or 2 years and he goes off in these 1 or 2 years. He's not going to get that multi-year contract, because when you think about it, who's going to offer a 6-7 year deal to a 33, 32-year-old first baseman? Not a lot of teams will do that. Not a lot. So what I think the Mets need to do to get him is, they obviously want that decision soon. So I think it's going to happen by the end of the week. That would be my best guess. It's going to happen by the end of this week, because the Mets need to know. They need to know. They don't want to take this thing into spring training. I don't think Pete Alonso does either, because if Pete Alonso re-signs with the Mets in spring training, he can't start opening day. I mean, we saw it last year with JD Martinez, that late sign of JD Martinez. He wasn't ready to start the regular season. That could be the case for Pete Alonso as well. And I know that. I don't want Pete Alonso re-signed on the Mets and he's not there on the opening day. I don't think a lot of Met fans do either. So it needs to get done by the end of the week. If not, Mets need to turn their attention to a guy like Anthony Santander. We can always roll I'm okay. I'm not sold on it completely, but I'm okay with rolling the dice with a Brett Beatty, a Ronnie Mauricio, a Luis Angel Acuna at third base. I am okay with that. I'm not completely sold on it, though, but I'm only okay with that if we get someone like Anthony Santander to DH, because the Mets still need they still need a big bat in this lineup, a power bat in this lineup. As great as Lindor, Vientos, and Juan Soto are, that's not going to get by the Los Angeles Dodgers. And that's the team to beat. That is the team to beat. And we're definitely not getting by them with the rotation that we have. And we're going to get into that a little bit, some starting pitching options that are still on the table for the Mets. But, we want another starting pitcher, right? That's also what we want. Some of the better starting pitchers. I mean, there's really minimal starting pitchers in the free agent market right now. It's really Jack Flaherty, and that's it. And Jack Flaherty is an injury-prone pitcher. I mean, he struggled in the second half when he got traded to the Los Angeles Dodgers. So as much as I want to say Jack Flaherty would be great in this rotation, would he really? Like, are we confident in Jack Flaherty to be an ace? I think the best years of Jack Flaherty are behind him. So I think you sign Pete instead of trade for Vladdy, which I don't even think is going to happen. Like I said before, the Blue Jays want to extend that guy, 26-year-old superstar. Don't get me wrong. I would love to have Vladimir Guerrero Jr. on this roster. It's a dream, though. It is a dream. That's what it is. And also, you trade for Vladdy. What are we going to trade for a pitcher if we want to trade for a pitcher like Luis Castillo or a guy like Dylan Cease in San Diego? because we're going to have to give up prospects for them. If we give up our whole entire farm system for Vladimir Guerrero Jr., don't get me wrong, I'd be pumped. I'd be ecstatic because thinking about a lineup of Vladdy, well, not in this exact order, but I'll put it in the order that I think it would be: Lindor, Soto, Vladdy, Nimmo, Vientos. I mean, that top five, especially if Francisco Alvarez produces, that's a great lineup. That's a lineup that can compete with the Los Angeles Dodgers. Not necessarily beat, but definitely compete. But then you got to factor in, who are we going to get in the starting pitcher market? That means you have to sign Jack Flaherty. Like, undoubtedly. Roki Sasaki's off the table. I don't even want to talk about that anymore. I mean, it's just inevitable at this point. The Dodgers are going to get him. Padres, no. Blue Jays, no. He's going to the Dodgers. So I don't see a world. I got to readjust this hat a little bit. I don't see a world where Pete Alonso doesn't re-sign with the Mets. He's out of options. And also, if he wants to be remembered, if he wants to be a great, his best chance of doing that is staying with the Mets. Because even if the Mets win a World Series, that dream that I have, that most of you guys have that are watching, thank you for watching, by the way. Let's say they did win a World Series with Pete Alonso on the roster. No doubt about it, he would not be the best player on the team. Juan Soto would probably be better. Francisco Lindor. You can even make a case that Mark Vientos might be better. But Pete Alonso would still be one of the most popular players on the team. He's been the top-selling jersey since 2019 for a reason. He is beloved by New York Mets fans. So that is what Pete Alonso has to take into account. Pete Alonso can get his jersey retired in just one more year. He's only 26 home runs away from breaking Darryl Strawberry's home run record with the Mets. Another reason for Pete Alonso to want to re-sign with the Mets and the New York market. Because if he goes to a team like the Los Angeles Angels, the San Francisco, well, he's not going to San Francisco. They just got Willie Adames and they locked him up long term. But he goes to a team like the Angels. No, he's not going to be what Pete Alonso would be on the New York Mets. He just wouldn't. But then I also see the Mets perspective. You know, Steve Cohen is not going to jump in. In Andy Martino's report, he already laid it clear out that Steve Cohen's on the same page as David Stern. So as much as we want Steve Cohen to jump in here, it's just not going to happen. He trusts David Stearns. I trust David Stearns. A lot of people trust David Stearns because David Stearns is a great president of baseball operations. Love him or hate him. Oh, he doesn't go after big guys. I think he will, and he has. I mean, one, I know it was definitely an owner signing with Juan Soto. But you're telling me Steve Cohen didn't go to David Stearns and be like, hey, I want Juan Soto. Can you get him? Yeah, I can get him if you really want. Yoshinobu Yamamoto, just last offseason, $325 million offer on the table. He wants young guys. Locking guys up over 30 on multi-year deals is not in David Stern's playbook. And I kind of like that. I mean, we saw it. We saw multi-year deals with guys over 30 just not work out all around the league. And even the Mets a few years ago, even though there were short-term contracts, we tossed all the money in the world at Justin Verlander and Max Scherzer. How'd that pan out? Not too well. So I like his philosophy, but I also want Pete Alonso back. I think he's a great fit, and I think we will have him back. And I think it'll happen by Sunday. That would be my best guess. Because starting next week, David Stearns is going to need to know, do I need to go get Anthony Santander as a DH? Because we already know, we're seeing it. Jack Flaherty's okay with taking a short-term deal. Santander's okay with taking a short-term deal. And Pete Alonso just last week, he said, well, not he said, but his rep said, yeah, we'll take a 3-year deal. But it's clear that the AAV right now is the problem. He probably wants to be, this is what Jim Duquette of SNY said, former Mets GM actually, but he reported that story that Pete Alonso would be willing to take that 3-year deal. But he also said when he was talking just recently on SNY today that Scott Boras, and it's clear, Scott Boras, if he knows he can't get a multi-year deal for one of his clients, he wants to get a record set AAV-wise. So they want to break that $30 million deal that Miguel Cabrera got per year. And they could, the Mets, I mean, I think they should do it. 93.5, 93.1, whatever you got to do. Make him the highest paid first baseman AAV-wise. Add a few opt-outs. And you know what? If he has a career year next year and he opts out, then you can say, hey, Now we got Pete Alonso. We can bring back. We can go all in on Vladdy. Maybe even Kyle Tucker. Obviously not all three at once, but the Mets would have options. So that's why I think you got to lock up Pete Alonso. Think about that lineup, man. That's a lineup that can compete with the Dodgers. Just like Vladdy could compete with the Dodgers, Pete Alonso could very well too. He's a guy who hasn't missed more than 10 games in a year. He's durable, has the best scoop percentage among all first basemen in baseball last year. And 3 out of his 5 full years, he's been an elite first baseman. And even last year, we all want to say it's a down year. And it was for him. But at the same time, very comparable to Willy Adames' year last year. And Willy Adames got 7 years. So if we can get Pete Alonso, who had just as good of a year as Willy Adames, performed in the postseason, proved that he's clutch, sign me up because we need another bat in this lineup. And I'm okay with it, but I don't want. And like I said, I'm only okay with it if we get like an Anthony Santander to DH. I don't want Brett Beatty, Ronnie Mauricio, Luis Acuna fighting for the third base position at the MLB level. And then we have we signed Jesse Winker to platoon with Starlin Marte. That's not a good lineup, especially with the rotation we have, especially with the question marks in the bullpen right now. I mean, it's Jose Budo, Reed Garrett, and Edwin Diaz. I mean, you also got Huskar Brasbone. I always butcher his name. He's got potential for sure, but I mean, we added Tanner Scott. I'd love it. That back end of the bullpen, that bullpen would be very good with just one guy, Tanner Scott. But I think Pete Alonso and Tanner Scott are my wish list right now. I think that's what it is. We like I said before, we want to maximize, yes, down the road, we want to maximize 2026, 2027, 2028, but we want to maximize 2025. Not necessarily just because we signed Juan Soto, but because Francisco Lindor is on the north side of 30. Do we think Francisco Lindor in 3-4 years down the road is going to be doing 270 batting average, 100 plus RBIs, 30 seasons in 3 to 4 years? No, I think it's unfair. And like I said, he's a great shortstop, one of the best in the league, undoubtedly, probably the second best right behind Bobby Witt. But I mean, man, do we think Lindor is going to be playing at the level he is right now, 3 to 4 years down the road? I mean, he could, but at the same time, do we want to gamble on that? So that's my take on why the Mets need to go all in on this Pete Alonso thing. Lock him up. Pete Alonso also, I mean, they both need each other. At the end of the day, they both need each other for 2025 and potentially beyond. Because, I mean, Pete Alonso is a DH down the road. I'm okay with it. I'm definitely okay with Pete Alonso as a DH down the road. I don't mind that one bit. As much as and that's what I'm also wondering is like, do the Mets think like, hey, we'll give you a 3-year deal, but with team options? Because then we can always say, bye-bye, we'll go get Vladdy or be in on Vladdy. And that's also another thing. Just because we got Juan Soto, it doesn't necessarily mean we're going to get every single big free agent. It doesn't. It doesn't. Does it give us a better chance with Juan Soto on the roster? Yeah. But do we just think just because we got Juan Soto, we're a lock to get Vladdy in the offseason? Or a guy like Kyle Tucker in the offseason? I think we'll be major players, especially if we don't have Pete. But that's a gamble. That is a gamble. That is a huge gamble. Because let's say we don't re-sign Pete. Offseason comes around, we don't get Vladdy. We don't get Kyle Tucker. Then what? Then what do you do? You're stuck with Mark Vientos at first base. You're stuck with one of those 3 guys at third base, unless they have a great year. You got to bring back Pete Alonso. Let me know in the comments. We got a little bit over 200 watching. Let me know in the comments what you guys think. Do you think the Mets should re-sign Pete Alonso? But let's get into some more Mets news before we get into this Yankees news. And then the Giants and the Jets, the terrible organizations that they are, and the Knicks with a stressful win tonight over the Philadelphia 76ers that went into overtime. Brunson with some clutch buckets down the road, and Josh Hart with another triple-double, 10 points, 17 rebounds, 12 assists. But couldn't stop Tyrese Maxey. And without Cat, I mean, it shows, one, Cat's playing with a thumb problem now. We need a big man, but we're going to get into that in a little bit. But let's get into some more Mets news. Tanner Scott, and then we'll get into the international prospect signing. But Tanner Scott, I think, makes a lot of sense for the Mets, especially if he's willing to take a short-term deal, like a 2-3 year deal. Why not? I mean, this is a guy who's been one of the best relievers in the game for 2 consecutive years. He's only 30 years old. He's turning 31 next year. This past year, 9-6 record, 1.77 ERA, 84 strikeouts. And I also love the innings pitched out of him. The innings pitched is the biggest part I love from Tanner Scott. This is a guy who pitched 78 innings in 2023, 72 innings in 2024. And he was consistently good. I mean, he had a 2.17 ERA combined in 2023, and then a 2. I'm reading FIP, but that's still really good, FIP. Where's the ERA? Yeah, 1.75 this past season. And then a 2.31 ERA in 2023. And that's pitching over 70 innings in consecutive seasons. 2022 and 2021, he struggled. 5.17 in 2021. 2022, 4.31. But in 2020, he was lights out as well. 2021 across 25 games in a 6-game year, which is pretty good. 25 games, 1.31 ERA. I mean, Tanner Scott is lights out. And if you have a bullpen of Reed Garrett, Tanner Scott, Edwin Diaz, and then you got long relief pitchers like Jose Budo. You can throw Tyler McGill in the mix because I think he's going to be on the MLB level in the bullpen, which isn't a bad idea necessarily. I mean, his brother's a lights out bullpen pitcher too. McGill's got what it takes, I think, to be a good bullpen arm. I'm not going to say he's going to turn out and be a great bullpen arm like Seth Lugo turned out to be a few years ago for us, and now he's one of the best starters in the American League somehow. But McGill, I mean, he throws hard. He can go a lot of innings. He can go a few innings, actually, out of that bullpen. So if you got a guy like McGill and Budo as your long relievers, you got Reed Garrett, Tanner Scott, and Edwin Diaz on the back end, and still the wild card in that bullpen is Bras Bowen because, I mean, before he came to the Mets, the reason the Mets traded for him is because he was one of the best pitchers in baseball. I mean, he had finished the year with a 3.79. Career rise, he's a 3.79 pitcher, ERA wise. But let's go over last year's stats just before he got on the Mets, because he finished the year with a 3.87 ERA, but before he got with the Mets, he was lights out. 2.93 ERA with Miami across 30 innings. Strikeout guy, 34 strikeouts in those 30 innings. Strikeouts dipped once he got to the Mets. Across 21 innings with the Mets, he only had 17 strikeouts. But, I mean, he's had good years. I mean, in 2022, in 27 games, 3.09 ERA. I'll take that. So, if he can get back to what he was before he got to the Mets, that's another good bullpen arm. So, as much as I want to say this Mets bullpen has question marks, the Mets bullpen would also be lights out if you just get one guy, and that one guy is Tanner Scott. We saw what Jeff Hoffman got. Let's take a look at Jeff Hoffman's exact contract. He signed a 3-year deal worth $33 million. And in my opinion, Jeff Hoffman has had a better career than Tanner Scott. I don't think Hoffman is better at this point. You can make a case because Jeff Hoffman was lights out for consecutive seasons now. In 2024, he had a 2.17 ERA. 2023 with Philadelphia, 2.41 ERA. But, you know, if he got a 3-year, $33 million deal, probably take Tanner Scott like 15 mil, I'd say a year. So you can go like 3 years, 45 mil. And let's keep in mind, the Mets had a lot of money come off the books last year. The Mets were the number 1 team in payroll last year. They're barely in the top 10 this year. So a lot of money come off the books, and that's even still with the Juan Soto contract, the largest contract in professional sports history, which is still insane to think about. But I think Tanner Scott would be a great fit in this bullpen. And I think it needs to get done. It needs to get done because especially with the rotation that the Mets have. I mean, Manaea, Senga, and Peterson, I love them. I really do. But Manaea had really one really good year so far. One really good year. In the first half, he struggled. I love Manaea, but in the first half of last year, Manaea wasn't who he was in the second half. I love the contract. I love Manaea as a pitcher and as the potential to become even better. But at the same time, we're talking about a guy with over a 4 ERA career-wise. We're talking David Peterson, same thing. I do like the idea of David Peterson getting better, especially what he did in the postseason. I'm excited to see how he can build off that. And then we're also talking Kodai Senga, who's got injury concerns. He's had injury concerns even before he got to the Mets when he was in Japan. But Senga, if he can give you 25, 30 starts, you'll take that. Because we all know Senga is a strikeout pitcher at over 200 strikeouts in his first year with the Mets in 2023, was an NL All-Star. Like, he was an ace. He was finished top 5 in the National League in ERA. So, I mean, if Kodai Senga stays healthy, knock on wood he does, but, that's also a question mark. Clay Holmes, Frankie Montas. I mean, we loved what David Stearns did with Jose Quintana, what he did with Luis Severino, even what he did with Sean Manaea. But can he keep that up? Can the pitching lab keep that up? So there's still question marks in that starting rotation. So you need to build a strong bullpen. Because I'd love for these guys to give you 6 innings every day, and then we get Reed Garrett, Tanner Scott, Edwin Diaz, and you can flip Diaz and Tanner Scott. We saw Mendy last year kind of use him how Buck Showalter did in 2022, where it was not necessarily you're closing, you are the closer. It's no, you're just going to be our best bullpen arm. When we need you in an important spot, you're going to pitch in that important spot. And that's also another wild card for the Mets is Edwin Diaz. Because if Edwin Diaz gets back to his old ways, when he was with Seattle, he was lights out. In 2022, he was obviously he had one of the best closing seasons in all of MLB history outside of Mariano Rivera, obviously. But I mean, at one point, I think Edwin Diaz only let up 9 earned runs across the entire year in 2022. If we get that Edwin Diaz or even a shade of that Edwin Diaz, that's huge, especially if you get a guy like Tanner Scott in that bullpen with him. Those are 2 of the best relievers in baseball right there. If Edwin Diaz gets back to what he was in 2022 or even close to. So build that bullpen up, get Tanner Scott. You can make a case for Ryan Stanek last year, who had a pretty good postseason with the Mets as well. And at the tail end of last year, he came up clutch with a few big innings for us here and there. But, I'd much rather have Tanner Scott over Ryan Stanek, and even both I think would be great for the Mets, really build up that bullpen. Especially, like I said, especially with the starting rotation that we do have. But let's go over the international prospect signing of the Mets. Everybody's rambling about it. He got a $5 million sign-on bonus. Elian Pena, MLB Pipeline's number 3 international prospect heading into 2025. Only 17 years old. David Stearns had a lot of great things to say about him. Just to summarize what David Stearns said earlier today, he did mess up his age. He said he was 16, but we'll let that slide. But Pena, according to Stearns, who's been one of the most famous prospects since the kid was 12 years old, which is insane to think. But Pena's got an elite discipline at the plate. So that's very good, especially for a 17-year-old kid. Also, he's just a great hitter in general. He plays shortstop, but he's an athlete just like Acuna. So, they're kind of planning on playing him at second base, third base, really all over. Maybe even the outfield, give him some reps. I mean, the kid's only 17. I have a hard time seeing a kid that good at 17, not being able to pick up an outfield mitt, maybe get some reps in center, get some reps at second, get some reps at third. Because I'll tell you what, if he's 22 years old when he comes to the bigs, in 5 years, Lindor will still be the shortstop. Why? Because I could say all I want at the beginning of the show about Lindor not being the hitter he is right now and 4 or 5 years down the road, but I have a hard time seeing Lindor not be even a shade of what he is defensive-wise right now, because he is that good. But yeah, I mean, Pena, it's a very exciting signing, but at the same time, the kid's only 17. I am not going to just expect this kid to come up and be a Francisco Lindor, a Brandon Nimmo, or Mark Vientos. Like, I'm not going to just put that on a 17-year-old kid, and I don't think Mets fans should. It's a great signing. It's an intriguing signing. He's got a lot of potential, but it's potential. It is potential, and he's only 17 years old, So keep that in mind with Elian Pena. I love the signing. Like I said before, number 3 international prospect, according to MLB Pipeline, heading into this year. But he's 17. Relax. Pump the brakes. Let's not put a lot of pressure on this kid by calling him the next great Met at 17 years old. So, kind of excited about it for sure. But he's not even going to be in the league for at least 3-4 years. So, but David Stern's excited about it. Like I said, I trust David Stern. So, as long as he hits in the minors, he's going to find a spot in a few years, whether it's at second, third, center, right, left, DH, Juan Soto down the road. Who knows? But he's an athlete. He's an athlete, and I love athletes. If you listen to my podcast, hear me talk about quarterbacks, I love athletes. I think this day and age in sports, it's not necessarily, who's the best three-point shooter, who's the best dunker, who's the best power hitter, who's the best power arm. No, it's you want an athlete. You want an athlete, man. And that's what being a pro athlete's all about. Cliche, but that's what it is. But just to put it into context of how good they really think he is, he's the fifth player the Mets ever given a bonus to more than $2 million. Just the fifth. The other five was Ronnie Mauricio, Francisco Alvarez, Alex Ramirez. I'm not too sure who the others are. It doesn't say in this article. If I had to guess, I'd say Jose Reyes was one of them. Maybe Carlos Gomez. But, I mean, realistically, the last international signing prospect that came up and performed at an all-star level was Jose Reyes for the Mets. So, that could change with Francisco Alvarez, with Ronnie Mauricio. But speaking of Francisco Alvarez, let's get into Francisco Alvarez, because I think Francisco Alvarez is also another wild card for the Mets. He's heading into year 3 now. I mean, we saw Mark Vientos figure it out like that. It's year 3, similar to how I'm going to talk about Anthony Volpe in a little bit, but these guys haven't done squat. We love the talent they have. We love the potential they have. I mean, both of them hit over 20 home runs in their rookie year. Francisco Alvarez specifically, 25 home runs, 63 RBIs, but a 209 batting average, a 284 on-base percentage in 2023. That ain't going to cut it, especially when you're trying to win a World Series. And I get it, he's a catcher, but at the same time, that's not good. That's not good numbers at all. Not one bit, especially for the player that we think he can be. At one point, not only was he a top international signing prospect, he was the top prospect in all of baseball just a few years ago. This past season, a little bit better on base percentage rise, but still not great. 307, OPS a 710, 237 batting average, only 11 home runs in 100 games. I get it. He was hurt a lot last year, but we need to see more. We saw Alvarez in big spots in when we were trying to get into the playoffs and in the playoffs. I mean, he was chucking his bat still. So heading into year 3 with Francisco Alvarez for a full season, I need to see more. I need to see more to kind of have confidence that Francisco Alvarez can be what we thought he could be. So that's what I'll say about Francisco Alvarez. I don't think he should have a huge leash heading into next year, as much as we love him, as much as we love to think about the player that he can be. But in year 3, we got to see more. We got to see more out of Francisco Alvarez. And I hate to say it, but it's true. It's true. And is through every year. I mean, the on-base percentage, even in 2022, when he only played in 5 games, 286 on-base percentage, 167 batting average. I get it, 5 games, but still. Career 294 on-base percentage. That's not going to cut it when you're trying to win a World Series. You can't have a guy in the bottom of your order just not get on base. You just can't. And you can say you love him defensively. He's got a great arm. He's gotten much better at blocking baseballs. But at the same time, if your on-base percentage is 294, you can probably find a better defensive catcher that has like a 300 at the very least on-base percentage. So Alvarez needs to perform a little bit better. A little bit more Mets news, and then we'll get into some Yankees. Take a quick break, and we'll get into the Yankees. Spent a lot of times on the Mets today. Just overall in 2025, a lot of people are questioning Jeff McNeil. Jeff McNeil arguably had the best stretch of his career after the All-Star break. I mean, he had the second highest OPS on the team only after Francisco Lindor after the All-Star break. Like, if you look at Jeff McNeil's stats in his last 60 games last year, let's take a look exactly those numbers, because the power numbers were up too, which is great. I will go 55. That was the exact amount after the All-Star break, basically, for him, even though he got hurt at the end of the year. But his last 55 games of 2024, just pulled it up, 272 batting average, 44 hits in those 55 games, 7 home runs, 27 RBIs. I mean, that's what you want. That's what you want out of a second baseman. So as much as I want to say, even if we do get Pete and Mark Vientos is that third baseman, do I want Acuna starting opening day at second base? No. And that's not a knock on Acuna. That's just, I want the best guy that's going to give you the best chance to win. But at the same time, Jeff McNeil should be on a short leash. If he's not performing like he was in the second half of last year, then you give Acuna a shot. Then you give Mauricio a shot. Then you give Brett Beatty, who played a little second base last year in the minors, a shot. But to start the year, I want the former batting champion. I want a career, well, not anymore, but going into last year, he was a career 300 hitter. That's who I want at second base, especially if he's playing like he did in the second half of last year, where he had a 272 batting average across his last 55 games with an OPS well over 800. So that's what I'll say there. He was a prime part in the Mets turnaround. I mean, like I said before, those stats in his last 55 games, let's just take a look at the OPS, second best OPS on the team, higher than Pete Alonso, higher than Mark Vientos, higher than Starlin Marte, higher than obviously Francisco Alvarez, who struggled, but an 845 OPS in his last 55 games. Sign me up for that. Like I said, short leash to start the year. If he struggles, pull him, give Acuna a shot. If Acuna struggles, maybe you roll the dice and give McNeil another shot. But I mean, we saw a lot of changes in McNeil in that second half. We saw him go away from that knobless bat. We saw him. I mean, I feel like the shift kind of struggled with him because he was that slap ball hitter. He can't really be that slap ball hitter. He pulls the ball a lot more. Diamond Tails on Twitter did a really good thread about what he saw and what a lot of people saw, just the changes that McNeil had in his swing. He was pulling the ball more. He was hitting more line drives. And when he hits line drives, it's clear you hit line drives, you're going to get a lot more hits. But he had a well over 500 batting average when he hit line drives in the second half of last year. So I do like McNeil starting at second base next year. What's up, Pops? Don't spend too much time watching. My Pops just commented, don't spend too much time. We got work in the morning. That's true. We do got work in the morning. But don't spend too much time watching them, bud. But yeah, that'll close it on the Mets topics today. Overall, like I said, Mets, get Pete Alonso. Get him. 3-year deal. I don't know why they wouldn't. As long as it's not over $95 million, you got to get him. You got to get him. But we'll take a break. We'll get in some Yankees news, some options for them at second base or even third base, because I don't think DJ LeMahieu is the best option for them. And then we'll obviously also get into some football too. Jets head coaching candidates, Aaron Glenn, Mike McCarthy, who just got fired from not fired, but let go from the Dallas Cowboys. They're not extending his contract. You got Rob Saleh getting interviews still from the Dallas Cowboys. He's not coming back to the Jets, obviously, but we got Josh McCown, former New York Jet quarterback, who's also got an interview. Rex Ryan seems like he's off the table, according to Connor Hughes from SNY. And then the Giants, I mean, Brian Dable and Joe Shane, they need to win games next year if they want to come back for another year. So who do they go with at quarterback if they cannot get a Shadur Sanders or Cam Ward? Who do they roll with? Russell Wilson, Kirk Cousins, Sam Darnold? Probably won't get a big deal that we thought he would, considering the last 2 weeks of the season he had. Probably still get a big annual salary, but I don't see him getting a long-term contract. But we're going to talk about that next on the James Nolan podcast. Thank you for you guys watching right now. And yeah, we'll be right back. Last 80 games of 2023, 284 batting average, 15 home runs, 44 RBIs. If we get that Lindor for a full year, and now I'm not saying last year he didn't have a all year. Look at the numbers. Last year, 2023, Lindor was a top shortstop. He was an all MLB shortstop. 30-30. He was a beast. But in the last 80 games, the second half, that's when Lindor really turned it up. If we get that Lindor for a full season, the Mets are going to make the playoffs. They're going to make the playoffs. And Lindor will be an MVP candidate. He has MVP potential. I've said it since the Mets have traded for him. Francisco Lindor has the talent, has the ability to win an MVP. He is that good. But he's inconsistent at times. I cannot ignore that. But over the last 80 games of 2023, he was pretty consistent. And he was probably the best, second best, right after Corey Seager. But he was arguably the best shortstop in all of baseball the last 80 games. That's what Lindor can be. And if we get that for a full year, not only will he be an MVP candidate, but the Mets will be in the postseason. He's that good. Lindor is that good. Now, I'm not saying he's going to win the MVP, but I've been saying it since we've traded for him. He has it in him. He does have it in him. Last year, undoubtedly his best year. Second half, he was the best shortstop in baseball. We get that for a full year. Mets are going to the playoffs. Let's go over to the DH, and then we'll get into the Yankees. Jorge Soler wants at least 3 years. If he wants 3 years and he's going to get 3 years, stay away from it. Last year, he was great, 30-plus home runs. Probably had the best year of his career. But he's also 31. He's had 11 years. It took him 11 years to have that type of year. I'm not saying that he's going to have that year for the next 3 years. I would stay away. So that gets me into my next guy, J.D. Martinez. I wrote a piece on it just last week. J.D. Martinez is a perfect fit with the Mets. Perfect fit. You got guys like Vientos. You got guy like Beatty. You got guys like Francisco Alvarez. You got all these young guys that you want to have make an impact for the Mets eventually in the future. Not only can J.D. Martinez help you now, but he's not going to take away at bats from those guys, one. And two, he could help those young guys. And he could be the DH for this year. He could help the Mets in 2023. That's really the simple answer. Why is he a perfect fit with the Mets? Because he would help them win in 2024. Down the road, is he going to affect the Mets? No, because it would only take a 1 or 2 year deal. Guy's 38. And guess what? I'm not going to say he's washed because guess what? He's 3 years in a row. He's made the All-Star team. 3 consecutive years. J.D. Martinez is the furthest thing from washed up. Just last year, 33 home runs, over 100 RBIs, 271 batting average. Lindor, Alonso, J.D. Martinez, Francisco Alvarez. 4 guys right there who have 30-plus home run potential. He makes the Mets lineup a playoff lineup. Mets, go out there and sign J.D. Martinez. Complete this lineup. What do you guys think? Should the Mets sign J.D. Martinez? I think he's a great fit here. But then again, I'm not David Stearns. So only time will tell. All right. We're back. A little Yankees news today. For starters, Michael Arias, Chicago Cubs minor league pitcher, 22 years old. They did take him. Chicago Cubs recently DFA'd him. Used to be a top prospect, struggled in the minor leagues, but maybe the Yankees can fix him. Who knows? They clearly see confidence that they can fix him. Low risk deal that they did. They also Dominic Smith, man. Dominic Smith. Let's see the exact details on this. He's going to be joining the New York Yankees. They signed him on a minor league deal, former New York Met. Career batting average at 246. He did have a very good 2020 year. Dominic Smith in 2020 with the Mets, 316 batting average, 377 on base, total of a 993 OPS. But really, that's the only good year that he had. So, nothing special, but still something to keep an eye on there for sure. But The biggest news, I would say, in Yankees land right now is the Marcus Stroman trade discussions. They want to move Marcus Stroman. Why? He sucks, for starters. Marcus Stroman, just his best years are clearly behind him. But he's got an $18 million salary cap right now. That's the hit that they have, and they're willing to pay down a lot of his salary, a good chunk of his salary, if they can move him. So that says something about Marcus Stroman in the pitcher that he is now at this point in his career. But what would they do if they trade Marcus Stroman? I mean, that leaves them with Garrett Cole. I think they maybe would kind of lean towards keeping him just to have some starting pitching depth with the injury concerns of Garrett Cole, Max Fried. Those two, as great as they are, injury concerns for sure. But outside of those two, they got Louis Hill, they got Clark Schmidt, and Carlos Rodon. So that's going to be their 5-man rotation, with Marcus Stroman likely getting traded somewhere, and they're going to be picking up a large chunk of his salary. So we'll see what happens. Keep a close eye on the Marcus Stroman trade rumors for sure. But nobody really knows who wants him. The Braves have been linked to him. But really, I mean, who really wants a pitcher that had over a 4.31 ERA, over a 5 ERA in the second half of last year? Like, he struggled. He struggled a lot. But we'll see what goes on with Marcus Stroman for sure. But second base wise, seems like they're committed to giving DJ LeMahieu a shot, or Oswaldo Cabrera a shot. Oswaldo Cabrera, 25 years old. We talked about DJ LeMahieu a lot in the last pod. So if you want to go check out that, we're going to talk about it in a little bit. But we'll start off with Oswaldo Cabrera, because I think that's the most intriguing option, considering his age. But I mean, he struggles. He's a struggling hitter through 3 years. He's got a .233 career batting average, and on-base percentage well under 300, 291. OPS career-wise, 643. Outside of his rookie year, where he played 44 games and had a 740 OPS, only a 312 batting average, not too great. But like, those are the two guys that the Yankees are going to be rolling out there for second base. So as great as I want to say the Yankees they had a good offseason for sure. I think the best offseason signing, not even signing, the best offseason move they've had was that trade for Devin Williams. Because Devin Williams, he is a lights-out closer, 30 years old, with Milwaukee last year, a 1.25 ERA. Insane, 1.25, only 22 games, but when he came back, he was a beast. 1.53 ERA in 2023 across 61 games, in 65 games in 2022, 1.93 ERA. And then in 2021, 58 games, 2.50 ERA. This guy for 4 consecutive years now has been probably one of the best relief pitchers, if not the best pitcher in baseball. Last 4 years combined, a 1.89 ERA across 206 games. Average per season, that's 52 games. That's really good. 308 strikeouts over the last 4 years. That's over 77 a year per year if you do average-wise. So Devin Williams, I think, is the biggest acquisition. I mean, that's a good bullpen replacement. They lost Tim Hill. They lost Clay Holmes. They lost some key bullpen pieces for them. Tim Hill was a very good bullpen pitcher for them last year. So now when you get a guy like Devin Williams, that's very good, especially Jordan Weaver in that pen. So the Yankees pen, I think, is going to be just as good as it was last year and the previous years, especially with a guy like Devin Williams in the back end, probably closing out the games now, taking over Luke Weaver's spot. So that's huge for the Yankees, and I think it's the biggest move so far for them. Cody Bellinger and Paul Goldschmidt, if Paul Goldschmidt can have a year like he did just a few years ago when he won the NL MVP, by all means, they're going to make a lot of people look like fools that didn't really want to sign him. But just last year, a 245 batting average, only 22 home runs. That's not obviously who he was in 2023. In 2022, when 2022 he won the NL MVP, had a 981 OPS, 317 batting average, 35 home runs. But then a huge dip in 2023, goes from 35 home runs to 25 home runs, from 115 RBIs to 80 RBIs. And then now in 2024, 22 home runs, only 65 RBIs. And then we'll take a look at the batting average, 317 in 2022, 268 in 2023, and then 245 in 2024. So this is a guy who's declining. So as much as I want to say Paul Goldschmidt, the name, the 7-time All-Star, 4-time Gold Glove winner, great. It's an upgrade for sure over Anthony Rizzo, but at the same time, he's been declining. He's 37 years old. I don't think it's as great of a signing as some people are making it out to be. No knock on the Yankees, but it is a knock on the Yankees. I don't think Paul Goldschmidt is going to be an impact bat for them. Cody Bellinger, he is a wild card. Cody Bellinger hit 266 this past year with only 18 home runs, didn't even go over 20, but still, he is still semi-young, 29 years old. If he has a season like he did in 2023 with the Cubs, where he hit 307 and 881 OPS, that's what you would take, 26 home runs. But he's not who he was when he hit 39 home runs in his rookie year with the Dodgers in 2017, or in 2019 when he won the NL MVP and hit 47 home runs, drove in 115 RBIs. I mean, this is a guy who's only hit 30 home runs, over 30 home runs twice in his career, just twice in his 8-year career. So as great of a name as he is, these former MVPs they got, they're not who they once were. So bullpen upgraded. Starting rotation, the exact same as last year. The Yankees got worse from last year. What's lucky for them, though, is that the American League sucks. The American League is awful. I mean, the Orioles got worse. The Red Sox, outside of Garrett Crochet, they're not, I don't think, a threat as many people are making them out to be. Toronto Blue Jays, yes, if they get a bounce back year from Bo Bichette, obviously they don't trade Vladdy. They could be players, but Yankees have Aaron Judge. Yankees have one of the best rotations, if not the best starting rotation in the American League. But speaking of that starting rotation, I want to talk about one guy specifically, and it's not Garrett Cole or Max Fried. I want to talk about Carlos Rodon, a guy who I've been heavy on since they've traded for him. But he did win 16 games last year for the Yankees. But like I said on previous podcasts in the past few years, Carlos Rodon signed an ace-like contract a few years ago with the Yankees when he joined them in 2023. In 2023, he was awful. A 6.85 ERA across just 14 games. This past year, 3.96 ERA in 32 games. Guy's only the first time he's ever started 32 games in his career, only started 30 games twice in his 10-year career, similar to Max Fried, who's only started over 30 games twice in his 9-year career. So Yankees, as good of an offseason as they had, they're not the same as they were in 2024. They're not the same as the American League champions of 2024. They're just not. So I think a lot of Yankee fans are kind of fooling themselves, hoping that they can get some Yankee magic out of washed up MVPs. But I think that what it is they got to bank on this starting rotation being lights out. They got to bank on this starting rotation being lights out. And that starts obviously with Garrett Cole, reigning American League Rookie of the Year, Louis Heel, and then Max Fried, the guy who just signed the 8-year deal. Clark Schmidt, I think you can bank on just to be Clark Schmidt. But Carlos Rodon, he's the wild card. I talk about a lot of wild cards on the Mets. Rodon's the wild card for the Yankees heading into 2025. If they get a year out of him like he did when he was with the San Francisco Giants, and the year before when he was with the Chicago White Sox, they're in good hands. I mean, when he was with Chicago White Sox in 2021, 24 games only, but he had 13 wins, had an ERA. Let's see that ERA. Where is it? Where'd it go? 2.37 ERA with the White Sox in 2021. And then with the Giants, that's where he got paid all that money. 2.88 ERA across 31 games, 14-8 record. So if they get that Carlos Rodon, Yankees are going to be a 90-win team simply because of their starting rotation. But it's not going to be because of their offense. If anything, I would say Jazz Chisholm Jr. has more potential in this lineup than a Cody Bellinger and a Paul Goldschmidt. And Jazz Chisholm Jr. wasn't hitting in the top 5 of the lineup. And I want to say Giancarlo Stanton is going to be this all-world hitter, but he hit the injured list 3 times last year. And realistically, he's only had one really Stanton year with the Yankees since he got traded there a few years ago. So this lineup is Aaron Judge. And if Aaron Judge goes down, we all knows what happens to the Yankees. Because let's take a look at the Yankees record without Aaron Judge since 2022. Yankees record without Aaron Judge. Let's take the exact record without Judge since 2022. 30-35 since 2022 without Aaron Judge. And now you're not even, if you lose Aaron Judge, you don't have Juan Soto. Then you got to bank on Paul Goldschmidt, Cody Bellinger, and Jazz Chisholm Jr. and Giancarlo Stanton to be lights out. And do we really want to bet on a 37-year-old guy who has significantly declined in the past 3 years? Do we want to bank on Cody Bellinger, who only hit 18 home runs last year? Do we want to bank on Jazz Chisholm Jr., who's really only good if he's surrounded by talent like Aaron Judge and Juan Soto? I don't think you want to do that. The Yankees, like Alex Bregman makes too much sense for them. It makes too much sense. And they're not getting him. They're not trading for Luis Arias. Jack Curry said that the Luis Arias trade for the Yankees is unlikely. And I trust what Jack Curry says. So if you're not getting Luis Arias and you're not getting Alex Bregman, what is the Yankees' plan? Like you just won the American League Championship. You have Aaron Judge. Is he going to be hitting 50-plus homers 2-3 years down the road? Is Garrett Cole going to be one of the best pitchers in the American League 2-3 years down the road? Is Max Fried going to consistently give you 30-plus starts 2 to 3 years down the road? Yankees have a champion. They have a very small championship window with prime Aaron Judge. They need to maximize that. I find it stupid of them not to go out there and get a guy like Alex Bregman. You get Alex Bregman on the Yankees, you shift over Jazz Chisholm Jr. to second base. You fill that hole right there. You got Bregman, multiple-time All-Star at third base. You got Judge. You got Stanton. And then the Goldschmidt and Cody Bellinger as fillers looks a lot better than expecting them to be impact bats in the lineup at this point in their careers. So the Yankees are very confusing right now. Very confusing. I don't know what their plan is offensively. It seems like it's DJ LeMahieu and Oswaldo Cabrera, and I just told you Oswaldo Cabrera sucks. He could obviously change that. Anything can happen. But do you really want to bank on Oswaldo Cabrera? Do you want to bank on DJ LeMahieu, who had a negative 1.6 WAR last year with a 204 batting average? And he only played in 67 games. Now, if they get the DJ LeMahieu of a few years ago, which is still unlikely to me because this guy's 36 years old now. But in 2022, I mean, 261 batting average, 377 slugging percentage, 357 on base percentage. That's good. Don't get me wrong, but that's behind. That's no more for DJ LeMahieu. He's not the 300 hitter he once was. But if you don't get Bregman and you don't get Arias, and Arias also makes sense. I don't want him anywhere near the Mets, and I'm happy the Mets aren't going to be trading for him. But he's a one-tool player, and the one team that could really use, I feel like, a one-tool player hitting leadoff is Arias. Because Arias in the leadoff spot, and you got Judge hitting behind him. How are you going to walk Judge if Luis Arias is on base? And then as much as it was bashing Cody Bellinger before, but let's say Arias and Judge get on base, and you got Bellinger batting third. Bellinger can probably, I hope, can drive him in. That's why they signed him or traded for him. So we'll see. The season is coming close. So we will find out who the New York Yankees actually are after winning an American League pennant in 2024. We will find out. But bullpen, I expected to be lights out, especially with the Devin Williams acquisition. I mean, this guy has been consistently one of the best relievers in all of baseball in the past 4 years. So great on Brian Cashman's end getting him. I like the Max Fried signing, but I don't like it down the road. And then, like I said before, Garrett Cole and Aaron Judge, They're not getting any younger. Yankees do not care. Yankee fans do not care about consistently making the postseason. Yankee fans want to win a World Series, and it's been since 2009. And I know my Mets suck and haven't won one since 1986. But the Mets had a surprising year last year, and they got better this year. The Yankees, they did what they expected to do last year, fell short of the ultimate goal, and got worse this year. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. Maybe the Yankees are planning something. Maybe the Yankees are saying, hey, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is going to be a free agent next year. Kyle Tucker is going to be a free agent next year. We'll go after one of those guys. But at the same time, how many more seasons is Aaron Judge going to have where he hits 50-plus homers? He's 32 years old, going to be turning 33 next season, so he'll be 34 at the time if they do get Vladdy or Kyle Tucker. So that's why I don't think it's very smart to roll the dice with DJ LeMahieu and Oswaldo Cabrera. We'll see what happens. Let's get into some football, and then we'll wrap this thing up with the Knicks. The Jets are interviewing everybody in the world. I think my dad's actually interviewing for the head coach position tomorrow for the New York Jets. We'll see how that one goes. But Rex Ryan, he's out, according to Connor Hughes. So we can kiss that pipe dream. I don't even think it's a pipe dream it's not really a dream for Jets fans to have Rex Ryan back. It would just be fun, I would say. But Connor Hughes says he's out of the running. We're going to get into the Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams situation because it seems like their time is done in New York. But Jay's Beers asked, so what's the ultimatum? The ultimatum, if you weren't listening before, you can go scroll back. But what the Mets basically said, according to Jon Heyman in his New York Post report, the Mets made an ultimatum with Pete Alonso and said this deal needs to happen soon. And the reason it needs to happen soon is the Mets need to make moves. They don't want to take this thing a month down the road and still not have another impact bat in the lineup with Juan Soto. They want to make a move like Anthony Santander. I think that's what their plan B is with this Pete Alonso situation, but that's the ultimatum. You can also go check out my article on Fansided if you want. I got the link to the author page. Where is it? Right here. Right there. Fansided.com/author/Jay Nolan. Vladdy is the pipe dream, obviously, but that could be pushing Pete Alonso to make his decision. And the Mets, according to Jon Heyman, basically said to Pete Alonso, yo, sign by the end of the week or we're going after another guy. And that leaves Pete Alonso that leaves him with minimal options. But the Jets, a lot of head coaching candidates that they have interviewed. Brian Flores, hot name. Aaron Glenn, probably the most, at least fan-wise, they want him the most. And I love Aaron Glenn. And let's talk about Aaron Glenn right now. Former Jet defensive, not stud, but pretty good. Pretty good Jets defensive back. Had 6 interceptions in 1998, 3 interceptions in 99, 4 in 2000, 5 in 2001, 5 in 2002. Great defensive coordinator for the Detroit Lions right now. They don't give up a lot of points. And that's what you love. I mean, yards, who cares about yards? If you don't give up points, that's how you win games in football. So, Aaron Glenn, I would love to have him. Also, just the way he connects with players. He's had multiple Lions players over at his house just to watch film, discuss with them. And he's basically described his coaching philosophy is, I'm not necessarily above you just because I'm your defensive coordinator or coach. Like, we're on the same page. Like, we both want to win. We're both professionals. And I think that's what you need in this era. Brian Flores, I'd love to have him as well, but he's the exact opposite. I mean, we saw with the Miami Dolphins, Tua hated him. The assistant coaches hated him. He was a micromanager, where Aaron Glenn, he would say, you do your thing, you do your thing, you do your thing. But at the end of the day, he means business. I mean, I've seen multiple videos of this guy going over film with his defensive players, whether it's in training camp, in the preseason, when they're playing against each other. You know, he means business. Curse words flying out all over. but he still knows what a star player wants, what a star player needs, because he was a star player for the New York Jets. So I would love for Aaron Glenn to end up being the head coach of this NFL team. But at the same time, there's also multiple other candidates that are intriguing. Josh McCown. I like the idea of Josh McCown, currently the quarterback coach for the Minnesota Vikings. We saw the year that Sam Darnold had. I mean, even a few years ago, he predicted that Sam Darnold would be a Pro Bowler when he was playing with Sam Darnold. So I would love the idea of Josh McCown. Very smart mind. I mean, Johnny Manziel even said when Josh McCown joins the Browns locker room when he was with the Browns, he was like, it was the only time I felt like a real football player. Josh McCown was like, dude, you can you can be a great quarterback. You just have to prepare like an NFL quarterback. Obviously, Johnny Manziel didn't really listen to him, but just the leadership that McCown provides, the offensive mind that he has, I would be intrigued by it. But Aaron Glenn is definitely my top choice. He is definitely my top choice. So let's take a look at the exact list. Because, like I said, they're interviewing everybody in the world. It feels like I said before, my dad got an interview. But right now, let's pull up this list. Aaron Glenn, Brian Flores, Mike Vrabel is no longer, but they did interview Jeff Ulbrich, Matt Nagy. He was with the Kansas City Chiefs. Had head coaching experience, obviously, with the Chicago Bears, but that didn't work too well out for him. I mean, the timeout management with him, I don't want him. Terrible with the Chicago Bears this year. Arthur Smith, currently the offensive coordinator for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Did anybody like what they saw out of the Pittsburgh Steelers offense? It was quite obviously Steelers won some sloppy games, and it was built around the defense. I'm not too high on Arthur Smith, especially when he was with the Atlanta Falcons. Wasn't too well. John Gruden, interesting choice. I don't think he's getting an interview just yet, but we'll see. Vance Joseph, Denver Broncos defense coordinator, also got an interview with the Jets. So we'll see what the Jets do, but I think Aaron Glenn is the ultimate top choice. Let's hit back on the Mets real quick. Eddie. What up, Eddie? Would you rather Vientos at first base plus Bregman and sign Vladdy next year, or re-sign Pete and Vladdy as DH? I don't think Vladdy would want a DH. I don't think Pete would want a DH. I think if we re-sign Pete, this is a hot take, but if we re-sign Pete, I'd say screw Vladdy. Go for Kyle Tucker. Go to Kyle Tucker in left field, and then that kind of gives you a tricky situation. Does Brandon Nimmo move back to center field? I don't think we should move Brandon Nimmo back to center field. I think Brandon Nimmo could be the DH for the New York Mets down the road. Obviously, the injury concerns, the plantar fasciitis last year. I think Nimmo as a DH would be a very productive DH. He's a 20 home run plus hitter. He's had an 800 OPS basically every single year besides this year in his entire career. So I would like the idea of if we re-sign Pete Alonso to go after Kyle Tucker. But then again, if we get Pete Alonso, I'm okay with that lineup because I have a hard time seeing Pete Alonso not having a bounce back year in this lineup with Juan Soto, with Lindor, with Vientos. I think he'd get some good pitches to hit. Eddie says, I'd rather re-sign Pete. Yes, and use the prospects to get a top-of-the-line starting pitcher. Because that's another thing I was hitting on. If you do, let's say Blue Jays say, you know what, we'll trade Vladdy. And I think it does make sense for the Blue Jays to trade Vladdy, considering he's not going to be a Blue Jay next year. I really don't think he's going to be a Blue Jay. I mean, not next year, but in 2026. Why lose him for nothing? But at the same time, Mets trade for Vladdy. We can kiss a Dylan Cease trade goodbye. We can kiss a Louis Castillo trade goodbye because we won't have the prospects to get those guys. So, back on the Jets. I like Aaron Glenn too. I dump Rodgers because he will be 42 next year, and that's perfect because I do want to get into Rodgers. Rodgers is interesting because, he did finish top 8 in passing touchdowns and passing yards this past year. But I don't even think Aaron Rodgers wants to come back to the Jets.
just based off what Devontae Adams has been saying, what Rodgers has been saying. I think Rodgers is still going to play one more year at least in the NFL, but I just don't think it's going to be with the New York Jets. And I don't think Woody Johnson wants him back either. It seems like Woody Johnson is leaving it up to the head coach and the GM to make that ultimate decision. But it also seems like Woody Johnson I think he's going to have a little bias in his head coaching hire. So if Aaron Glenn doesn't want Rodgers, and let's say Brian Flores does want Rodgers, I think he goes with Aaron Glenn, because I think in Woody Johnson's heart right now, he's saying, I don't want Aaron Rodgers. It hasn't worked out. It's been 2 years. If we roll it, yes, you could bring back Rodgers, and the cap hit with Rodgers would actually be less if we cut him. But then again, we have another dead cap hit with or without him that's very high in 2026, with or without Rodgers. So do you want to cut the ties with him now? Similar to what the Denver Broncos did, where they had an insane cap hit this year just with Russell Wilson not on their team. But now the Denver Broncos, they have Bo Nix. Sean Payton, obviously, is a great head coach. Like, they got a good roster now. And they can still build off that because all that money will come off the books. Whereas Rodgers, if we have him on for another year, that money's not coming off the books for another 3 years. So that's why I'm also okay with letting go of Rodgers. But who do we replace Rodgers with? Who's the stopgap? Because I'm still in the belief that the Jets still have good enough talent to win some football games, potentially make the playoffs next year. So with Aaron Rodgers, I think it maximizes that potential, because that means Devontae Adams likely comes back. And if you have Devontae, I want to say Garrett Wilson, but does Garrett Wilson request a trade if Rodgers comes back? That's been floating around all off season, even in the all regular season. So if it's Garrett Wilson or, Aaron Rodgers, I think we're all rolling with Garrett Wilson. So Peter says Justin Fields. I love the idea of Justin Fields. If you can give me Justin Fields and Tyrod Taylor next year, sign me up. Because if Justin Fields doesn't work out, boom, Tyrod Taylor. I like the idea of similar to what the Jets did when they had Sam Darnold and they had McCown, they had Sam Darnold, and they had Teddy Bridgewater. You get Justin Fields, he's your Teddy Bridgewater. You get a young QB, maybe a Jalen Milroe, who I love. I love Jalen Milroe. He's just an elite runner of the football. He's got a cannon of an arm. So I do love the idea of Jalen Milroe. I mean, we saw at the Patriots quarterback, Joe Milton, who has got a cannon of an arm, similar to Jalen Milroe. And he can move too. So I want a Jalen Milroe if we can draft him, I'd love to draft Jalen Milroe. Maybe sign Justin Fields on a prove-it 1-year deal. You give him the starting job, and you have Tyrod Taylor also in that QB room as the veteran, similar to how we had Josh McCown, Sam Darnold, and Teddy Bridgewater. Maybe you trade Justin Fields if he lights it up in the preseason to a quarterback-needy team, and then you have Tyrod Taylor or Jalen Milroe compete for that starting job, and probably going to be Tyrod Taylor, and then Jalen Milroe substitutes him in mid-year. But I like that idea. I think, Justin Fields is a no-brainer if you can get him, especially on a cheap deal. I don't think he's going to command a lot of money. Justin Fields hasn't done enough to command a lot of money. I'd say Justin Fields would probably get a similar contract to what Sam Darnold got with the Vikings heading into this year, with a lot of incentives if he does well. But the $10 million sign him for the year. And then I think he got $6 million extra in incentives, which he did hit on most of those. So he got, I think, right around $16 million this year. But a lot of people are saying he's not going to be re-signing with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and I don't think he will either. 25 years old, though, very intriguing. He's an athlete. He can run. His running ability is sick. He went 4-2 with the Steelers this year. 10 total touchdowns, 5 rushing, 5 passing, only 1 interception. A completion percentage of 65.8 in those 6 games, 1,106 passing yards. And then rushing, I mean, just as good. That's what he does. He's a runner. He's a runner, 289 yards rushing, 5 touchdowns, 19 first downs on rushing attempts in those 6 games. I'd love Justin Fields. I would. I love that idea, Peter. I really do. But they do need a quarterback. They do need a quarterback. And that's what they just need, because their offensive line isn't that bad. Olu Fashanu obviously went down with the injury against the Rams, but he's an intriguing talent as a tackle. You got Joe Tippmann, who played in every single snap on the Jets offense this year. that was a very good pick by Joe Douglas a few years ago. Love Joe Tippmann. AVT, Elijah Vera Tucker's coming back. The Jets actually have a pretty good offensive line and a young offensive line. And they have Garrett Wilson. They got Breece Hall. And on the defensive side, I mean, Sauce Gardner, I have a hard time seeing that he's going to have back-to-back down years. And in the second half, he did turn it around for the Jets. He had a pretty good year where people just weren't throwing to him because he was tight on the coverage. I felt like a lot in the beginning of the year. He was kind of jumping on those balls, similar to how with the Cowboys, why am I forgetting his name? Why am I forgetting the guy on the Cowboys' name? Trayvon Diggs, similar to how he was jumping and letting up a lot of big plays. I feel like Sauce Gardner was doing that a lot in the beginning of the year, just jumping, trying to make that big play, and then just getting burned. Because we saw it. He did get burned a lot in the beginning of the year. But you get a quarterback on this team that's not Aaron Rodgers. I think you can still win with a guy like Justin Fields, even a guy like Tyrod Taylor, and then down the road, maybe a Jalen Milroe steps in. Or you wait it out because next year's draft class, quarterback-wise, I would say is just as talented as this year's. I mean, the headliners, I don't think we're going to get Arch Manning. He's probably going to go number one overall if he plays how people think he can play. You got Nico, I hope I'm saying this last name right, Nico Amaliva. Yeah, hard to say his last name. And then Lenore Sellers. I mean, those are three very good quarterbacks heading into the draft in 2026. Drew Aller is going to declare for the draft probably in 2026. Quinn Ewers is probably did he declare for the draft recently? But you also have Carson Beck, who just transferred over to Miami from Georgia. He'll probably be in the draft next year. I want to stay away from Carson Beck, but we'll see. We'll see what the Jets do at quarterback. But, you know, I'm as much as I want Aaron Rodgers back, just looking at it down the road, the effect it's going to have on this team when we're going to want to sign, obviously, Sauce Gardner to a big contract this offseason. Garrett Wilson is going to be due for a contract. Breece Hall is going to be due for a contract. Jermaine Johnson is going to be due for a contract. Will McDonald is going to be due for a good contract. The Jets have a lot of talented players that I want to lock up long term. And if you can get a young QB like Justin Fields on a cheap deal, if you can get a young QB in the draft that you hit on a rookie contract, that gives you the ability to pay those players around him and have a talented team around him. Similar to what the Broncos have right now. Similar to what the Vikings had this year with Sam Darnold and probably going to have with J.J. McCarthy now next year since Sam Darnold crapped the bed in the last 2 weeks of his NFL season. But I saw some people actually floating around Sam Darnold. He's still going to get paid. I mean, this guy just threw 35 passing touchdowns and 4,300 yards. He's going to get paid like a top quarterback. I don't think it's going to be a multi-year deal. I don't think it's going to be anything more than 3. But Jets, don't bring back Darnold. Just don't. But yeah, that's what I was saying. The Jets, head coaching wise, Aaron Glenn. I love Peter's idea with Justin Fields. I think Justin Fields, Justin Fields, Tyrod Taylor, and a rookie quarterback as the QBs next year. That's intriguing. I'll sign up for that. Because like I said, this team can still win some games next year, and I'm sick of rebuilding. I'm sick of tanking. I'm sick of that. I want to win. And now let's talk about the Giants, who also want to win. Giants have a few QB options. Number 3 in the draft. It seems like Travis Hunter might actually go to the Giants. They've also been talking about taking an edge rusher, which I could see they don't really need an edge rusher with Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, obviously Dexter Lawrence on that defensive line. They got a pretty good pass rush. Bobby Okereke also as a linebacker, Micah McFadden. You know, you like kind of the talent of him. Hasn't really shown out just yet, but he's still very good. He's got a lot of potential. But I think taking Travis Hunter would be a no-brainer because Travis Hunter, at the very least, he's going to be an elite cornerback. And then he can also give you some red zone targets. I mean, this guy had 4 interceptions as a cornerback this year, at the same time of having over 1,200 receiving yards and 15 receiving touchdowns at Colorado this past year. I don't think he's going to translate in the NFL as a dull threat. But, I mean, if you get some red zone targets out of him, and even if he is just a wide receiver, I mean, you got Malik Neighbors and Travis Hunter as your wide receivers. Whew. Yeah. But let's take a look at the quarterbacks. I think the best option for them is Kirk Cousins. Kirk Cousins, you know, I don't think he's Russell Wilson. He's not Russell Wilson. He's not going to suck like Russell Wilson did with the Pittsburgh Steelers this year. Michael Penix, he's obviously going to take over final few weeks of the season last year. In the 3 weeks he did start, 737 passing yards, 4 total touchdowns. So Kirk Cousins' time is done. He has 3 years remaining on his contract. But the Falcons have a few options. They have a few options. If they cut him, they'd owe him $27.5 million. If they keep him and trade him, they'd have to be paying him $37.5 million, but they can also kind of have that other team pick up part of that salary, obviously. But I don't think a team is going to do that because they're going to use that to their advantage. Like, keep him. Keep him. We'll go with the Justin Fields. We'll go with the Sam Darnold. They're going to have to cut Kirk Cousins. And if they cut Kirk Cousins, he's going to be playing on a veteran minimum. So the Giants wouldn't have to pay him a ton of money. And Kirk Cousins with another LSU standout receiver like Malik Neighbors. Malik Neighbors would probably love Kirk Cousins as his quarterback. We saw how frustrated he got with the quarterback play this year. So, this past year obviously led the league in interceptions, but still 18 touchdowns, 3,500 yards, I believe in 14 games. His best years are obviously behind him, but, he even said he didn't forget how to play quarterback. And I don't think he is a Russell Wilson, And Neighbors, obviously, he proved to be one of the most talented, if not the most talented young wide receiver in football this year. Tyrone Tracy, over 1,100 scrimmage yards. Cousins would elevate those two. He would elevate those two. So that's why I'd go Kirk Cousins. Another option for them, just like Peter mentioned, he wants Justin Fields with the Jets. Justin Fields is also a very good option for the Giants. Still young, 25 years old. Obviously, like I said before, 4-2 record last year with the Steelers. 5 passing touchdowns, 5 rushing yards in those 6 games. So 10 total touchdowns in 6 games is pretty good. Only 1 interception also in those 6 games. But he hasn't done enough to get a long-term contract. So similar to Cousins, he's not going to cost a ton of money. But the Giants also do have some cap space. They have a little bit over $50 million cap space. They're probably going to restructure Dexter Lawrence's contract and Brian Burns' contract, save a little bit more. And then that would give them an opportunity to go after a guy like Sam Darnold. Sam Darnold coming off, obviously, one of the best years of his career, undoubtedly. He was a top 5 quarterback this year. Say what you want about Sam Darnold. He still went 14-3 with the Minnesota Vikings. He still threw for over 4,300 passing yards, and he still recorded 35 passing touchdowns. So say what you want about Sam Darnold, but he's a Pro Bowler this year. So, and obviously, he needs a top receiver. Giants have a top receiver in Malik Neighbors. They have a good running back in Tyrone Tracy. They have a good left tackle. They do. Why not? Andrew Thomas, as long as he stays healthy, I think the Giants can actually win some games depending on what they do at quarterback. I think number 3 overall, they shouldn't trade up. They shouldn't trade down. I've seen some people float around the idea of a Dak Prescott trade. Do we really think the Giants would trade their future away to the Dallas Cowboys? Do we really think? I think for the Dallas Cowboys, it'd be a no-brainer. You get Deion Sanders. And we already got Fenny saying Deion to the Cowboys. So if Deion goes to the Cowboys, they probably want to take Shadur Sanders because Deion Sanders already said, he loves Colorado. 2, he wants to coach his kids if he's in the NFL. So if the Cowboys have an opportunity to trade up, get Shadur, get Deion, no-brainer for them. Trade Dak away. But do we think the Giants would really trade that number 3 overall pick to the Dallas Cowboys to pick up the contract of Dak Prescott? So that's what I'll say there. But Giants, they need to win. They need to win. They're not going to be tanking next year like they did this year. Brian Daboll and Joe Shane, John Mara, he didn't sound too pleased when he made that announcement that they're keeping him. He just sounds like a guy who doesn't want to go through another head coach and a GM search. Every 2-3 years, it's been that. I like Brian Daboll. I'm not too high on Joe Shane, but I like Brian Daboll. And Brian Daboll knows if he loses next year, if he has a year like he did last year, he's done so, at least for the Giants. So they got to win next year. So that's why I think the best option for them is Kirk Cousins, especially to elevate Malik Neighbors, get a chance to go to the playoffs, and then next year you go for that quarterback. Because I don't think they're going to get that quarterback in this draft. Unless they go mid-round pick, they get a Jalen Milroe, who I'd hate for him to go to the Giants because I want him on the Jets. But they could go to a route like that and even still get Kirk Cousins. Have Jalen Milroe sit a year behind Kirk Cousins. Great veteran quarterback. So I would love to see the Giants get Kirk Cousins no matter what they do. I think it makes perfect sense for them. Russell Wilson, don't. But let's hop into the Knicks, and then we'll wrap this thing up. Quick Knicks talk. Obviously, they need another big man. Cat's going to be playing with an injury these next few weeks. Takes about 3 to 6 weeks to recover from his thumb injury that he has. But Josh Hart still proving that he's the engine of this Knicks team with another triple-double. Kind of wondering who leads the league in triple-doubles besides Jokic. I feel like Josh Hart is right up there. But Josh Hart, man. Josh Hart been money. 17 points. 10 points from him, 17 rebounds, 12 assists from Josh Hart. 4-9 from the field today. Didn't make a three, but didn't matter. Still a triple-double. Finished the game with a plus 10. The highest on the Knicks tonight outside of Precious Achiuwa, who actually had plus 9, even though he struggled. Mikal Bridges, he's finding his form, 23 points tonight. He's been on fire since after the last 10 games of the season. Mikal Bridges has been Mikal Bridges. Jalen Brunson doing what he does best, getting clutch buckets, 45 minutes, 38 points, played every single minute in the second half, 14 to 22 from the field, 7 to 9 from the free throw line, and 50% on 6 shots from 3. This team is just built around their starting 5. It's built around their starting 5, but you can't. I'm not a minutes police, but I don't really I don't care. I really don't care how many minutes Josh Hart plays, Mikal Bridges plays, Jalen Brunson plays, Karl-Anthony Towns. I don't care how much minutes they play. But at this point in the season, when you have an 8-man rotation, that is not good. They need more options off the bench. I love Mitchell Robinson. I really do. But we cannot bank on him saving the Knicks. Because even if he does come back, he could always get hurt again. I love Mitch. But I don't want to bank on Mitch to save this team. They need to make a move. Eddie Presti has been calling for Jonas Valanciunas. I would love that. Jonas, he can score. He can put the ball in the basket. Obviously, he can block shots. He's good in the paint defensively. I would love Valanciunas. He's not definitely what he once was, but off the bench, helping Cat out, get Cat some minutes even at the power forward position. I'd like that because I'm sick of seeing Jericho Sims be that backup center. I'm just sick of it. Jericho Sims played not bad tonight. Not bad, but he's Jericho Sims. If we're in the playoffs and we want to win a championship, you can't have Jericho Sims as your backup center. You just can't. Tyler Kolek, I know a lot of people want to see him, but he's a rookie, and we all know how Tibbs treats his rookies. He doesn't like playing them. He doesn't like giving them minutes, so that's unrealistic. As great as we think he is, especially after that sick half-court alley-oop to Jacob Toppin in the G League the other night, he's just not getting minutes on this NBA team. He's not. Miles McBride, though, he's obviously the best option off the bench, and I would love to obviously keep that option, but he needs help. You can't bank on Mitch. I would like to see Campaign get some more minutes. Campaign, why sign him and only play him 15.2 minutes per game? Those 15.2 minutes per game this year, he's averaging 7.2 points off the bench in those 15 minutes, shooting 40% for 3. We can easily see a little bit more Campaign. I'm wondering why we're not, but, you can't knock Tibbs. You can't. We're exactly where we expected to be. We'd be the second seed in the East if it wasn't for the Cleveland Cavaliers having the best year, best regular season, you could say, maybe in their entire franchise history. And yes, that's with LeBron James. I'm not saying they're going to win a championship, but they're having a great regular season. Nobody expected the Cavs to do this. But the Knicks are right there. Knicks are third in the Eastern Conference right now, 27-15. What's there to complain about? Tibbs is doing a great job, in my opinion. We got a top 3 team of the East. Jalen Brunson is having another career year. You look at his assist numbers. His assist numbers are off the charts this year. He's averaging 7.6 assists per game, 25.7 points per game. And then Cat, too. We all thought maybe Cat needed some time to kind of mesh with this Knicks team. No, he didn't. He clicked right away, 25.4 points per game. Probably having the best year of his career, shooting 55% of the field, shooting 45% from 3. The rebounding numbers is obviously from Tibbs. 14 rebounds per game under Tibbs head coaching. I'm not surprised with that. That's Tibbs. averaging almost a block a game. And this is a guy who usually averages half a block a game. He's almost averaging half a block. He's averaging 0.8. So, but he needs help. Cat needs help. Tibbs needs help. Leon Rose is going to work his magic. We saw what he can do with the trade market. He is a freaking beast. He's a beast. Like Stephen A. Smith, the Stephen A. Smith show, I thought this was pretty funny. He's been having his nephew on recently, and they were like, oh, who are the top 3 U.S. presidents? He put Leon Rose in there because Leon Rose is that good. So I trust the Knicks to find that other bench piece. I trust the Knicks down the road. We'll see what happens when the playoffs come, but I like where the Knicks are at right now. Third in the East. They haven't made a move yet. They make a move, they can improve. And even if they finish with the 3 seed, that's still home court advantage for that first round. So we'll see what they can do when before the trade deadline hits, but they obviously need to make a move, get some more depth. But for the Tibbs haters, Tibbs ain't going nowhere. He ain't going nowhere. So quit with fire Tibbs, fire Tibbs. Shut up. All right, that'll do it for tonight's show. Thank you guys for watching. Let's go re-sign Pete Alonso. Yankees, I don't know why you're not in on Alex Bregman. I don't understand. But we'll see. Yankees just got to wait to see what this team is made of. Knicks, obviously, go make that move. Jets, go hire Aaron Glenn. Giants, go get Kirk Cousins. That'll wrap today's show up. Thank you guys for watching. We got over 400 of you right now. Love each and every one of you. I appreciate each and every one of you. If you want to go over to YouTube, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. If you're watching on X, maybe hit that like and retweet. Who knows? Who knows? But yeah, if you want to check out the articles, go check out the articles right on fansided.com, fansided.com/author/Jay Nolan. Most recently posted tonight a little take on my Pete Alonso with the ultimatum situation that headlined the show today. The Vladdy dream trade, could that be holding back the Mets' pursuit of Pete Alonso, that heavy pursuit, I should say, of Pete Alonso? Or is it more to push Scott Boras and Pete Alonso saying, hey, we got options. We got other options. And obviously my Giants article that was recently posted that included Kirk Cousins and why the Giants should sign him this offseason on the veteran minimum. All right, that'll do it. I'm out of here, guys. Love you guys.